Robot Wants Kitty is a game that I made a level editor for. My name's Simon, and I'm making this video because unfortunately the meeting where I gave this presentation was not recorded. It was originally presented at Reykjavik Data Beers in January. So let's get going. What is Robot Wants Kitty? Robot Wants Kitty is a game, a mobile game for iOS and Android by Raptisoft. You could call it a retro platformer to categorize it. It's not particularly special in any individual way. What makes it great is that it has a level editor in the mobile game, and it has a platform for sharing levels. And this has allowed it to develop a community of people who are making levels which are way beyond the built-in levels in the game. People make adventure levels, puzzle levels, skill levels where you have to time your jumps to the millisecond, and some levels can clearly show that people have put hundreds of hours into developing them. And in this community, you have people who have made these absolutely enormous levels, and an example I'm going to show in a minute here. And they've made them in this in-game little level editor with no undo functionality, no backups, no zooming out, and no copying pasting of sections or like macro tooling of any way. And so here's an example of a zoom out of one of those levels, which is just enormous. It's like 250,000 blocks, which were placed by hand and painted individually. It's insane that someone would spend that time. So I was thinking, I'm not that creative. I'm not going to be making these levels, but I'm a developer. I can maybe give these people a better level editor. So first step was to get the level files. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, which I'm not going to talk about here. Second, I thought I might get the documentation for this level format. And in fact, I reached out to the developer because this game has been abandoned for a decade. And he said, well, he'd like to help me, but it's a proprietary framework, and so, sorry, he can't help me. He doesn't mind me trying on my own, though. So I went ahead and reverse engineered the format. So how did I do that? Well, the level editor allows you to make a minimal level and no changes. And when you export that in a binary format, you get this mess of bytes. What you can see immediately is that it's not a text-based format. It's a binary format. But we can still make some progress because we know approximately what information must be in there. There must be something about the tiles that you walk on. There must be something about the way they painted. Something about the position of the robot and the kitty. So the goal of the level is always to get the kitty. And there must be message boxes, links to music, tags, and a bunch of stuff. So when you make a minimal change with the layout tools of the blocks that you can walk on and paint a row of tiles like this, you can see that in the hexadecimal representation, you get a row of ones that appear with a distance of 4 bytes. And that is really good news because it means it's not compressed. There is clearly an array of cells somewhere in this file. And in fact, the cells are 32 bits per cell, which is a standard size in computer science. We also see that there is a header somewhere, and in fact, by making levels of different sizes like this, I was quickly able to find out that there's an A7 here in the grid, which is binary for or hexadecimal for 10.7, and that's the default size of the level grid when you start out. Then you can move on. You can paint these tiles because you have different paint tools, and you can overlay paint on base blocks. And when you look at this, we see that we have a bunch more data, and this data seems to go on both sides of these ones. This one and this one and this one. Those were the base tiles. But now we also have a lot more information around about them. And we see that the second and third tile, which look the same here on the diagram, on the picture, they actually have the same binary information. Again, that's very promising. And the first one looks slightly different. But we did have a problem here that the paint information is not byte aligned with the it's not aligned with the byte edges. So you have some paint bits which are going on the other side of the base block information, which is about apparently 7 bytes. So that was a bit annoying. There were more problems, like if you paint over it one more time, some bits actually change. And so there was some information about like editing history and so on. But there was some progress to be made here. So, but leaving that aside for a second, I moved on to the robot position. So what happens here? I found some bytes on the bottom of the file, which change when you move the robot around in your level. But how it moves, how these bytes change was really not very apparent to me. Moving the robot through 3 different positions, there were these bytes, which changed from 0C43, 34, 43, and 5C, 43. And just, it took me a really long time, many weeks, to try and figure this out. What is going on here? Finally, it dawned on me, these are floating point representation of the pixel position of the robot. So when you take 140, 180, and 220, those actually map to byte values, which are very similar to what we see on the left. 140 is the position you get if you take the edge of the level and then count 40 pixels per cell from the edge of the level. And that number represented as a floating point and converted into binary gives you 4303. So 4303 is not quite the same as 0C43, but it's the reverse. And it's the reverse byte order. So from that, I realized that the encoding used in these levels files was little endian. The 40 pixels per tile is something you can tell from the screenshots also. But with this information, I went back to the paint, and looking at this picture again, where you have the base and the paint, and they seem to be mixed a bit, you can actually reverse the byte order, and now the paint at least is contiguous. It's still not byte aligned, but at least it's contiguous, which makes it nicer. And with this contiguous information, I was able to figure out all the code points for the different paint tiles. And I could hand edit these hex files to make a new level, or take a level and change around its paint to make it something completely different. What you can see in this level that's playing on the screen here is that there seems to be lava cells, and there seems to be these what's called Velcro tiles, which are not normally paintable in the game, but by hand editing the hexadecimal information, I was able to make this level. So that was a really big step forward. But if I want to share this with the community, having them edit hex files was not really an option. So I needed to find a good level editor. And I found this nice piece of software. The Tiled Level Editor. It's a standard, it's a generic level editor meant for 2D tile-based games. And it has all sorts of great tooling, including like a layering system and different paint palettes you can apply to your brush and so on, copy pasting of sections and so on. It's a really nice piece of open source software. So and its structure actually maps fairly well into the Robot Wants Kitty level structure. And the best thing is it supports a plugin system. So I was able to build a JavaScript plugin that would allow you to open and save Kitty level files in this editor. And that's what I built. And with this plugin, you can now use the Tiled Level Editor to open these Kitty files, and you have access to all the tools in the game, including the base tiles and the paint and the messaging boxes and tags, all the settings. And I even found a bug. Because if you take this shape on the bottom left, this, you could call it a hash mark, and paint it in the in-game level editor, you will get this tile in the bottom right corner of the shape, which is not correctly painted, or not painted as you would expect it. And it turns out that was not a missing tile in the game, that was just a bug in the level editor, the way that that completed this paint. And I didn't have to replicate that mistake in my level editor. So my level editor, you can actually paint that tile. So that was pretty cool. So this has all been shared with the community, and the people that make these really impressive levels, they've been using this for a number of years now. It's all open source if anyone wants to get the source code. I also really recommend that you check out mapeditor.org, the tiled level editor, if you make similar games. It's a great piece of software. And if you want to get in touch, I'm on LinkedIn. So the Discord link is for the community of the people who make these levels. So that was it. Hope you enjoyed. And comment if you want to know more. Thank you for your time.